Before this story begins, imagine something. 10,000 people, a brightly lit ring in the center of an arena, the most feared karate champion in America standing under the spotlights with a microphone in his hand. And that champion is pointing directly at you. Then he tells 10,000 spectators that you are a coward. What would you do? Most people would lower their heads. Most people would tell themselves it wasn't worth it. Most people would leave through the nearest exit and let the story grow without them. Because once 10,000 people believe something about you, fighting that belief becomes harder than fighting a man. But Bruce Lee was not most people. And that is why what happened in Los Angeles during the autumn of 1972 still gets talked about decades later. The story was never really about who won. It was about what happens when reputation collides with truth. And when two of the greatest martial artists alive are forced to find out which one matters more. Los Angeles Sports Arena. Out in 1972. The building smelled like sawdust, sweat, cigarettes, anticipation. 10,000 spectators filled the seats long before the main event began. Black belts sat beside college students. Journalists filled entire rows near ringside. Photographers adjusted heavy cameras. Parents brought children hoping to witness history. Nobody knew exactly what kind of history, only that something important was coming. The event had been advertised for months. 4 days of competition, hundreds of competitors, thousands of spectators. The finest martial artists in America. And on the final night, there was one attraction larger than all the others combined. Chuck Norris, the undefeated champion, the king of American karate. The standard everyone else was measured against. To understand this story, you must understand what Chuck Norris represented in 1972. Today, people know him through movies, television, jokes, internet legends. But back then, he was something different, something more dangerous. It was reality. A 3-time world karate champion, undefeated for more than 6 years. A man whose victories were not rumors, they were documented facts. Tournament after tournament, opponent after opponent. Every challenge ended the same way. Chuck Norris won. Many martial artists had styles. Chuck Norris had proof. That made him different, and that made him feared. When he entered the arena that night, the reaction felt less like applause and more like an earthquake. The roar started near the front rows, then spread upward, then outward, until the entire sports arena seemed to shake beneath it. People stood, whistled, screamed. Some held signs, others simply stared, watching greatness walk toward the ring. Chuck raised one hand, not dramatically, not theatrically, just enough to acknowledge the crowd. A man who had been there many times, a man completely comfortable under pressure, a man who knew exactly what he was worth. The announcer stepped forward. 3-time world champion. The crowd roared. 6 consecutive years undefeated. Another roar. The most dominant karate competitor in America. The loudest roar yet. Chuck smiled politely, then accepted the microphone. The first part of his speech was exactly what everyone expected. Discipline, sacrifice, dedication, training, respect. He spoke honestly, not like an entertainer, like a competitor. The audience appreciated that. Every sentence felt earned. Every word carried the weight of experience. Then something changed. Apse. A small pause. The kind that tells you a person is about to say something they've wanted to say for a long time. Several reporters looked up immediately. They felt it, though. Chuck smiled. Not a large smile, a small one. Dangerous. Intentional. There are many stories in martial arts these days. The audience listened. Many legends. Another pause. Many names that grow larger every month. People exchanged glances. Nobody knew where this was going. Yet, Chuck continued. In 20 years of competition, I've learned something very simple. I slowly looked around the arena. Greatness isn't proven in magazines. Silence. It isn't proven in movies. More silence. It isn't proven through stories. Now people were paying very close attention. Chuck pointed toward the ring beneath his feet. It is proven here. The crowd exploded. Then came the sentence that changed the entire night. The year before last, I offered a certain martial artist a chance to meet me. The audience leaned forward. A private demonstration. A pause. No cameras. Another pause. No audience. The building felt strangely quiet now. Used to men. Chuck lowered the microphone slightly. And the truth. Silence. Then he said the name everyone already suspected. Bruce Lee. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Bruce Lee. Even in 1972, the name carried enormous weight. Not because of tournament championships, because Bruce represented something mysterious. Something different. Something many traditional martial artists didn't fully understand. His students adored him. His followers praised him. Magazines couldn't stop writing about him. Stories followed him everywhere. Stories about impossible speed. Stories about impossible reflexes. Stories about impossible training methods. So many people believed every story. Others believed none of them. Chuck Norris looked directly into the audience, then said, I offered him the opportunity. Silence. He never appeared. The words landed heavily. Very heavily. Nobody screamed. Nobody gasped. The reaction was worse. 10,000 people began whispering. The sound spread through the arena like smoke. A low collective murmur. Because so many people already wanted to believe it. And now one of the most respected champions in America seemed to be confirming it. Bruce Lee. The legend. The phenomenon. The man from magazine covers. The man from demonstrations. The man everyone talked about. A coward? The idea spread instantly, and dangerous ideas spread faster than truth. Chuck handed the microphone back. The crowd continued whispering. The narrative had already begun growing. And once a narrative begins growing in front of 10,000 people, stopping it becomes nearly impossible. Almost. Because unknown to everyone inside the arena, Bruce Lee was already there. Standing quietly in a side hallway, listening to every word. And within the next few minutes, the entire sports arena was about to witness something no one had expected. For a few seconds after Chuck Norris handed back the microphone, nobody moved. The crowd wasn't cheering anymore. They weren't laughing, either. They were thinking. And that was far more dangerous. Because his stories become powerful the moment people begin believing them. And right now, 10,000 spectators inside the Los Angeles sports arena were beginning to believe a story. A simple story. A satisfying story. The kind people love because it explains everything without requiring them to think. Chuck Norris had challenged Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee never showed up. Therefore, Bruce Lee must have been afraid. Simple. Clean. Easy. The audience could already feel the narrative forming. Reporters were writing headlines inside their notebooks. Photographers were discussing tomorrow's newspapers. Fans nodded knowingly to one another. As if they had finally received confirmation of something they secretly wanted to believe. That the famous Bruce Lee was all mythology, all speed, all demonstrations, all stories, no proof, no reality, no courage. Chuck Norris stepped away from the center of the ring. His expression remained calm, professional. But those closest to him noticed something. He kept looking toward the side entrance of the arena, again and again and again. Almost as if part of him expected something or someone. Near Rinside, veteran journalist Frank Morrison noticed it, too. Frank had covered boxing, karate, wrestling, everything. And after 20 years around fighters, he trusted instincts more than words. Something felt strange. Chuck did not look like a man celebrating victory. He looked like a man waiting. The crowd continued murmuring. The sound rolled across the arena like distant thunder. Then suddenly, it stopped. Not gradually, instantly. A movement near the side entrance caught everyone's attention. One person turned, then another, then 100, then 1,000. Within seconds, 10,000 people were looking in exactly the same direction. A man had appeared in the entrance tunnel. No spotlight followed him. No announcement introduced him. No dramatic music played. Yet somehow, he became the most important person inside the building the moment he took his first step. Bruce Lee. At first glance, he looked completely ordinary. Dark trousers, white t-shirt, no championship belt, no uniform, no trophies, no entourage. Nothing about him seemed designed to impress, and yet nobody could look away. Perhaps it was the way he walked, calm, balanced, completely relaxed. The movement of a man carrying absolutely no fear. Or maybe it was his eyes, focused, alert, quietly intense. The eyes of someone who had already made a decision. The announcer stared, speechless, for nearly 3 full seconds, then finally raised the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he stopped because he didn't need to finish. The arena already knew. Years later, people who attended that night would describe the moment differently, but they all used variations of the same phrase, the loudest silence they had ever heard. Bruce walked toward the ring, one step, then another, then another. The crowd parted naturally. Nobody told them to move, they simply moved. Nearinside, photographers scrambled into position. Camera flashes exploded. Reporters abandoned their seats. People stood on chairs trying to see better. The entire sports arena seemed to lean forward simultaneously. Chuck Norris never looked away, not once. The distance between the two men slowly disappeared. And as it disappeared, something unexpected happened. The expression on Chuck's face changed. Not contempt, not arrogance, not mockery, recognition. Because unlike the audience, Chuck Norris understood exactly who was approaching him. He knew the stories. He knew the training. He knew the reputation. Most importantly, he knew how many parts of that reputation were true. Bruce climbed the 3 steps leading into the ring. The crowd watched every movement. Dismayed spectators, total silence. Then Bruce stepped through the ropes. For the first time all night, he stood directly across from Chuck Norris. The visual difference shocked many people. Chuck was taller, broader, heavier, a world champion, physically imposing in every possible way. Bruce looked smaller, lighter, almost ordinary, at least until you looked into his eyes. Neither man spoke, not immediately. They simply looked at each other. Two martial artists, two legends, two completely different paths leading to the same moment. Finally, the announcer handed Bruce the microphone. The audience expected anger, expected excuses, expected confrontation, expected defense. What they received was something else entirely. Bruce spoke for less than 2 minutes, yet people remembered those 2 minutes for decades. I did not come here tonight looking for an argument. His voice was calm, almost gentle. The crowd listened. I did not come here to explain myself. A pause. Martial arts are not proven through stories. The audience exchanged looks. The statement sounded strangely familiar. Bruce continued. They are not proven through magazines. Silence. They are not proven through words. Now everyone understood. He wasn't disagreeing with Chuck. He was agreeing with him. Then Bruce pointed toward the ring beneath his feet. If you want to know what I am capable of, a pause, the ring is here. Another pause. So am I, silence. Absolute silence. Bruce handed the microphone back. Nothing more. No speeches. No accusations. No explanations. Used truths. Simple. Direct. Unavoidable. The entire sports arena waited. Because now the decision belonged to Chuck Norris. For several long seconds, Chuck said nothing. He studied Bruce carefully. The same way he studied opponents before championship matches. The same way great fighters always do. Then he nodded once. A small nod. Barely noticeable. Yet somehow, everyone understood its meaning. Chuck turned toward the announcer, leaned forward, and quietly proposed terms. The announcer listened, nodded, then slowly raised the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," the crowd held its breath. "Chuck Norris accepts." The arena exploded. People screamed, jumped to their feet. Reporters ran toward telephones. Photographers pushed closer. The sports arena had transformed from a tournament into history. But then the announcer raised one hand, and the noise faded again. "There will be no protective gear. Chairs. No judges. More chairs. No points." The building shook. "No time limit." The loudest reaction yet. Then came the final rule. The first man to touch the floor loses. Silence. Heavy silence. Because suddenly, this wasn't entertainment anymore. This was truth. Pure truth. No scorecards, no politics, no debate, just two men, one ring, and reality. Bruce looked at Chuck. Chuck looked at Bruce. Neither smiled. Neither blinked. Neither moved. For the first time that night, 10,000 people realized they weren't about to witness a performance. They were about to witness an answer. And within minutes, everything they believed about both men would be tested. The first exchange changed everything. Not because someone had won. Not because someone had lost. But because 10,000 people suddenly realized they had misunderstood what they were watching. Until that moment, most of the audience believed the night would be simple. One champion, one legend, one answer. They expected Chuck Norris to expose Bruce Lee. Or Bruce Lee to expose Chuck Norris. Either way, they expected certainty. Instead, they got something much more complicated. They got reality. The referee stepped back. Both men stood at the center of the ring. No judges, no points, no protective gear, no time limit. The first man to touch the floor would lose. Nothing could hide behind technicalities. Nothing could hide behind scorecards. There would only be truth. Chuck Norris moved first, and the crowd instantly understood why he had dominated the karate world for years. It wasn't just speed. People always talked about speed. Speed was easy to notice. The real danger was efficiency. Every movement served a purpose. Every inch of motion had been refined through thousands of hours of competition. No wasted energy. No wasted movement. No hesitation. His first attack came low. A fast sweeping kick, not flashy, not dramatic, practical. Designed to remove balance immediately. Bruce saw it, barely. He lifted his foot just enough to avoid it. The audience gasped. Most people never even saw the kick, only the reaction. Chuck didn't pause. He flowed directly into the second attack, a driving shoulder pressure. 100 kilograms of momentum moving forward with frightening precision. Bruce twisted sideways, but not completely. The contact still landed, hard. The impact forced him backward. His right foot slid, his balance shifted. For the briefest moment, 10,000 spectators thought they had just witnessed the end. The referee leaned forward. One judge rose slightly from his seat. The crowd held its breath. Bruce's foot touched, not fully, not enough, but close enough to create doubt. The referee consulted the second official. 7 long seconds passed. 7 seconds that felt like 7 minutos. Then the referee shook his head. No point. No foul. Fight continues. The sports arena released one collective breath. Only then did people realize they had stopped breathing entirely. Bruce stepped backward. Reset. Focused. Thinking. And that was when something important happened. Something most people missed. Bruce changed. Not physically, mentally. Because during those first exchanges, he learned something. Chuck Norris was better than expected, much better. Stories had described him as a champion. Reality described him as a problem. A very serious problem. His timing was sharper. His distance control was cleaner. His reactions were faster. Everything about Chuck felt more dangerous than reputation suggested. Many fighters would have panicked. Many fighters would have doubled their aggression. Many fighters would have tried proving something. Bruce did none of those things. Instead, he observed, calculated, adapted. That ability separated Bruce from almost everyone else. Most martial artists entered a fight with a plan. Bruce entered with questions. And every exchange gave him answers. Chuck attacked again. A rapid combination, hand, kick, pressure, movement, relentless. Bruce avoided the first strike, redirected the second, shifted around the third. Not because he was faster, because he was reading. The audience couldn't understand exactly what they were seeing, but they could feel it. The momentum was changing. Chuck remained dangerous, extremely dangerous. But now Bruce had begun solving the puzzle. A few rows behind ringside, veteran coach Harold Peterson whispered to another instructor. "Is downloading him." The instructor frowned. What? Peterson never looked away from the ring. Bruce isn't fighting yet. A pause. Is studying. The next exchange lasted less than 3 seconds, but it changed the atmosphere entirely. Chuck launched another combination. Bruce moved differently this time. Not backward, not away, throw. A slip between the attacks, not around them, between them. Operating inside tiny gaps most fighters never even noticed existed. Suddenly, Chuck found himself slightly off balance, only slightly, not enough to fall, not enough to lose, but enough. Bruce stepped forward, close distance, and placed an open palm lightly against Chuck's chest. Not a strike, not a shove, not an attack, a message. The gesture lasted less than a second, yet the entire crowd understood it immediately. If that had been a real strike, the outcome might have been different. Chuck understood, though. His eyes narrowed. For the first time all night, the champion looked genuinely surprised. The crowd erupted, not because anyone had scored, because suddenly the impossible seemed possible. Chuck adjusted immediately. That was what champions did. They adapted. He lowered his center of gravity, shortened his attacks, reduced the space Bruce needed. The adjustment was brilliant, exactly what a world champion should do. And for several exchanges, it worked. Bruce found less room, less opportunity, less freedom. The pressure increased again and again and again. Chuck drove him backward toward the ropes. The audience rose to their feet. People sensed something decisive approaching. Bruce's heel touched near the edge of the ring, dangerously close. Chuck advanced, one final surge. Perfect timing. Perfect pressure. Perfect execution. The physics favored Chuck completely. His weight, his momentum, his position, everything pointed toward one outcome, the fall. The spectators saw it coming. Reporters prepared headlines. Photographers adjusted lenses. Even the referee leaned forward. Then, Bruce Lee did something nobody expected. Instead of resisting the force, he accepted it. It dropped. Not onto the floor, not backward, downward inside the pressure. A controlled collapse, a calculated surrender to momentum. Using Chuck's forward movement against him, suddenly Chuck found himself moving into empty space. His balance shifted. His center disappeared. And before anyone understood what was happening, his knees touched the canvas. The arena froze. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. 4 seconds. That was all. 4 seconds of absolute silence. The referee stared. The judges stared. The crowd stared. Then the referee pointed toward Bruce Lee. And the sports arena exploded. The sports arena exploded. The people rose to their feet simultaneously. Some screamed. Some applauded. Some simply stood frozen trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Because moments earlier, Chuck Norris had been seconds away from victory. Now the referee was pointing toward Bruce Lee. And history had changed direction. The noise became overwhelming. Reporters rushed toward the ring. Photographers climbed onto chairs. Fans shouted Bruce's name. Others shouted Chuck's. The building felt less like an arena and more like the center of an earthquake. Yet, inside the ring, something strange happened. Neither man celebrated. Neither man reacted to the crowd. Neither seemed interested in the noise surrounding them. Chuck Norris remained kneeling for a moment, breathing heavily, sweat covering his face. His knees had touched the canvas. The rule had been clear. The first man to touch the floor loses. No debate. No controversy. No politics. No excuses. The fight was over. Across from him stood Bruce Lee, calm, focused, almost expressionless. Not because he didn't care, because he understood something the crowd didn't. The fight itself was never the important part. The truth revealed by the fight was. For several seconds, neither man moved. The crowd continued roaring, but inside the ring, it felt strangely quiet. Chuck slowly stood. His breathing remained heavy. His chest rose and fell. Yet, his eyes never left Bruce. Many people expected anger. Others expected frustration. Some expected excuses. After all, champions are human, and losing hurts. Especially in front of 10,000 people. But, what appeared on Chuck's face surprised everyone. Respect. Pure respect. Because Chuck understood exactly what had happened. Not luck. Not coincidence. Not an accident. Bruce had adapted, solved the puzzle, found an answer under pressure, and then executed it perfectly. Great fighters recognize greatness even when it defeats them, especially when it defeats them. The crowd continued screaming. Yet Chuck ignored them completely. His attention remained on the man standing across from him. Meanwhile, Bruce remained silent, not enjoying the moment, not feeding from it, not turning it into a performance. Many fighters dream about proving themselves. Bruce had just done it. Yet there was no satisfaction on his face, only calm. Then something happened that nobody expected. Bruce started walking toward Chuck. The audience immediately grew louder. Many assumed another confrontation was coming. Perhaps words, perhaps an exchange, perhaps one final dramatic moment. Instead, Bruce extended his hand. Nothing more. Used the hand. The gesture looked simple, ordinary, small. But in that moment, it carried more weight than the entire fight. Chuck looked down at it for 1 second, then 2. Not because he was refusing, because he understood exactly what the gesture meant. Bruce wasn't offering victory. He wasn't offering pity. He wasn't offering dominance. He was offering respect. The kind of respect that can only exist between two people who have tested each other honestly. Finally, Chuck accepted. Their hands met. Firm grip, strong grip. Mutual understanding. The crowd erupted again, even louder than before. Years later, a photograph captured at that exact moment would become one of the most discussed images connected to the story. So many people claimed they saw admiration in Chuck's face. Others saw relief. Others saw acceptance. Perhaps they were all correct. Because there is a strange peace that comes from discovering the truth. Even when the truth hurts. The announcer hurried toward them carrying a microphone. His hands were shaking. The audience wanted words. They needed words. He handed the microphone to Bruce Lee. 10,000 people instantly became quiet. Bruce looked around the arena, at the spectators, at the reporters, at the students, at the martial artists, at Chuck Norris. Then he spoke. What you saw tonight was not one man defeating another. The crowd listened. It was two men searching for truth. Silence. The ring is the only place where truth cannot lie. Another pause. Chuck Norris is one of the finest martial artists in this country. The audience seemed surprised. Many expected boasting. Many expected victory speeches. Many expected Bruce to enjoy the moment. Instead, he continued praising the man he had just defeated. What I found tonight, Bruce glanced toward Chuck. He found because he forced me to look for it. The arena remained silent. Those words hit harder than any punch thrown during the fight. Because they revealed something unexpected. Bruce wasn't interested in proving he was better. It was interested in becoming better. The difference mattered. Champions often chase victory. Masters chase understanding. Bruce handed the microphone back. No long speech. No dramatic finish. No attempt to build a legend. Just honesty. Chuck nodded slowly. The respect between the two men had become impossible to ignore. Then both fighters left the ring together. Side by side. The audience watched them disappear down the same hallway. No celebration. No rivalry. No hatred. Only respect. Reporters desperately tried following them. Photographers rushed behind them. Everyone wanted one final story. One final quote. One final headline. But the most important conversation happened where nobody could hear it. Inside a quiet corridor behind the arena. Away from cameras. Away from applause. Away from attention. Nobody knows exactly what was said. No recording exists. No transcript survives. Only fragments. Rumors. Memories. What is known is that the conversation lasted several minutes. And when it ended, Chuck Norris spoke to reporters before Bruce did. A journalist asked him directly, "What did you learn tonight?" Chuck paused, then answered, "There are some things you only learn when someone shows them to you face to face." A pause. "Tonight, I learned one." He never explained further. It didn't need to. Meanwhile, Bruce Lee left through the rear exit of the sports arena. No press conference, no victory parade, no celebration. A journalist who had invited him that night finally caught up with him outside. "Bruce." The reporter hurried alongside him. "You had 10,000 people listening." Bruce kept walking. "You could have used that moment." Bruce looked at him. "What moment?" "The victory." The journalist sounded confused. "The attention." A pause. "The crowd." Bruce smiled slightly, then continued walking. "Finally," he answered, "that's not what victory is for." The journalist stopped writing. "What do you mean?" Bruce looked toward the dark Los Angeles street ahead, then gave an answer that stayed with the reporter for the rest of his life. "Victory isn't something you use against people." A pause. "It's something you build with." Then he walked away. Years later, many people would remember the fight, the sweep, the balance, the fall, the handshake. But those who understood Bruce Lee best remembered something else. Not how he won, but what he did after winning. Because a character is easy when you're losing. Humility is easy when you're struggling. Grace is easy when nobody notices you. The real test comes after victory. When you finally have the power to humiliate someone, the power to take revenge, the power to make another person feel small. Bruce Lee had that opportunity. 10,000 witnesses, a defeated champion, the perfect stage, and he refused to use it. That choice became the real victory of the night. Not over Chuck Norris, not over karate, not over any opponent, over ego itself. And as the lights of the Los Angeles sports arena faded behind him, Bruce Lee left carrying something far more valuable than a win. He left carrying proof that true martial arts were never about defeating another person. They were about defeating the worst parts of yourself. And that was a lesson far more difficult than any fight that ever took place inside a ring.